Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Paul Harrison from Agriculture Advocates and my partner here, Adam Cornish.
Hey guys.
Um, Coming to talk to you all about agricultural developments today. Just hit on some of the things that we've seen over the past week or so that are hopefully of particular interest to U.S. agricultural sector.
Yeah.
Um, Adam, you got anything you want to say off the top?
Um, so I have so many things I'm excited to talk about on the science and technical realm, but let's start off with the Strait of Hormuz because that's our ongoing story. What's going on with the Strait? It's probably free and flowing now, right?
Straight remains as blockaded as it has been for a while now. So I think, as everybody knows, right, no real developments there. The president is pondering the latest Iranian offer, which apparently is to open the strait if the United States lifts the blockade and stops stacking. I would give that a slim chance of being accepted in its
Hmm.
current form. That proposal, but we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly, nothing's really moving. I see the Iranians are stacking up their oil tankers, loading all their crude onto it because they're running out of storage capacity on land. They're even pulling
Really?
old oil tankers out of storage and filling them up with oil.
That's
Um,
crazy.
well, it's what they're gonna do, right? So, I think everybody's playing this game of chicken
Hmm.
until, Iran runs out of storage capacity. Um, then they'll have to make some hard decisions, maybe some concessions, and we'll see how long we can stand it. I see that gas in the US hit a record of $4.22 per gallon on average, today, so we'll see how long we can stand it too. So, that's
Exactly.
about all I know.
Well, I mean, and add on top of that, you and I just got news alerts about the UAE saying that they're backing out of OPEC, and
Yeah.
so it sounds to me like they're trying to create some pressure themselves, right?
Quite possibly, right? I think it's an interesting development. Didn't see, necessarily that one coming, but I'm not an OPEC expert. There's certainly, risk for the cohesion in OPEC going forwards, right, among the remaining members, there, and, UAE is an important producer, in the world markets, and so we'll see what kind of, impact this has. Of course, the Strait of Hormuz isn't open, so they really, not much getting out until it opens up. But once it does, if they're producing at an unfettered rate and then other countries try to do that too, I mean, conceivably, you could see gas prices come down in the short term, but I think in the long term, it just creates a lot of chaos and volatility and doesn't help really anybody because it's hard to forecast where demand's going to be and where supply is going to be. So,
Yeah, but it's a threat to the U.S. basically.
yeah,
Um, you know, they're going to have some kind of effect on the oil market and LNG market. And uh, does the U.S. think that it can handle that amount of pain both throughout the conflict and then after? Because once they pulled out, they're not going back in.
yeah, you would think that they're not going to go back in, right? So, yeah, it's a real challenge, and you see U.S. producers, right? Dallas Fed had a survey of producers last week, I think, and it was I thought really interesting, right? Those producers, those guys, they don't know what's happening next. So even though oil is elevated, they're not rushing to drill new wells because it's expensive and you don't know if you're going to recoup it because you don't know what the price is going to be 6 months from now, right? So there's just a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty. UAE dropping out of OPEC kind of adds to that, I think.
Mm.
And we'll just, you know, continue along here. The main issue is the strait's not open. So 20% of the world's oil and gas is not flowing. Now we're getting to the point where the ships that were carrying the last cargoes to leave the Gulf have reached their destinations. So
Yeah.
now folks are really going to start to notice the gap.
Hmm.
We'll see how that pressure, builds up, how consumer demand is impacted, how prices are impacted here over the next few weeks. If it's not open, think, we're all going to take some hits.
Yeah, especially our farmers. So, like, I'm
Yep.
just looking at the numbers, and it seems that fertilizer prices in general have risen 30% since February. Urea itself is specifically up 47%. And, it's not fertilizer, but diesel is 46%. And so farmers are going to have to be bearing even higher brunt of higher prices in the near future.
Yeah, they are right, and you see all the reporting about what farmers are doing, right? They're buying less fuel, they're buying less fertilizer. And they're doing everything they can to economize, right? Because they're not getting higher prices, and so it's a tough situation, right? I don't see any simple way out of it, but we need some kind of resolution, gets that straight open so that things are flowing again.
Well, I'm going to be reductionist and say there is a simple solution: end the conflict, right? The U.S. unilaterally started it. We can pull back on out, and it won't cause prices to go down overnight. But if we're looking for short-term solutions, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, but I think we're at the point where there's not a unilateral solution, right? The Iranians
No.
have learned the lesson of how much leverage they have.
Mm,
They're gonna want to charge folks to come through the strait. They're gonna want control of the strait. If they can get it, they're gonna try to play that card. I mean, they are playing that card, right?
mm,
And, that's not something that the Gulf states are gonna agree to or that the US should agree to, right, going
no.
forwards, right? That's a bad precedent to set, right? And a bad situation to tolerate. And so how do we get through that? Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
leave
so
that
I
to
mean, we can
the.
stop bombing, and we have, but I don't think that solves it because Iranians are like, "Hey, look at this. We don't need a nuclear weapon. We've got control of the Strait of Hormuz."
I agree that it's not going to be something that gets taken care of immediately. If the administration wants to really address fertilizer prices in the short term, that's what they're going to have to be doing. Though they have to go back to they have to actually go to the
Yeah.
negotiation table. They have to be willing to make some concessions and recognize that the situation is going to only become more volatile as time goes on. It's great that Secretary Rollins is out there talking about projects, about somehow using money from the tariffs to help reduce fertilizer prices. But this is all stuff that's a year, year and a half, 2 years out. Our farmers can't last that long. And so, if the administration is serious about helping farmers, one of the things they need to do is be sitting at the table and seeking a resolution now, not 2 weeks from now.
Are there any new ideas? I mean, I've seen some of the reporting, but I haven't seen any new ideas come out. I mean, anything different from, like, what, we did when we were working in previous administrations on trying to boost fertilizer supply domestically and things like that, bringing stuff in from, I mean, making sure you've got all the potash you need from Canada. Fortunately, Canada's, got potash, so
Yeah.
that's at least not a problem at the moment. Um, but are there any other ideas out there? I've not
All I
seen them all.
All I've seen is that everything old is new again. So there
Yeah,
are previous Biden administration programs that are being held up and being said, well, we don't like the administration, but we do like these ideas. Especially trying to uh, foster streamlined regulatory processes. And I think they're trying to get smaller companies to invest, but
yeah.
it's a hard market to enter, especially when the source materials are so expensive at the moment.
Yeah, it's hard to get started, right? And you've just got a duopoly, right? I mean, there's only a few, um, big producers, right? And they're not looking for competition, but it's an area where you need competition. I'm not sure that the regulatory aspect is that big of an issue, right? I
I
don't
don't know it well enough,
know
so
how
I
much
don't
that
want to.
inhibits new producers, but,
Yeah,
you
I don't
know
want to speak too heavily in there, but that because I don't understand, I don't know the particulars. But EPA and USDA are theoretically hearing from companies to find out where they can reduce regulatory hurdles.
yeah,
I'll be direct and mean to the administration again. They want to see fertilizer prices go down. If they want to see fertilizer competition, get rid of the tariffs. Stop having
yeah.
these unilateral retaliatory tariffs, especially against Russia and Morocco. Fertilizer will flow again.
Yeah, the tariffs pose an impediment to trade, right? Yeah, so you need some competition, you need to get things flowing, that could be helpful. I did see one of the, large producers was shutting down a plant in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
and so taking,
Mosaic.
fertilizer off the market, right? I mean, I'm sure there's an economic justification of that for the shareholders, but, for the farmers, that's
Mm-hmm.
tough news, right?
Yeah.
Tough news.
Um, on the side of tough news, last week we reported on the White House putting forth funding, a potential budget for USDA for
Yeah.
2027, and it had steep cuts. The House has come out with its own budget. It's looking a little bit better. Have you had a chance to look at that?
Sorry. Um Drink of water there. But, yeah, a little bit, I just You know, agriculture has done best when we've invested some money in it. Not, vast sums, but when we've invested in innovation, in research. We're cutting back on that, and I think that's gonna have some real negative consequences.
Hmm.
Um, it's a failure to recognize the benefits that have flowed from federal funded research in the past. Um, and I know everybody likes to say that, but it is true when you look across the economy, right? The space program brought so much innovation, right? The funding by DARPA on the early internet brought the internet, right?
Hmm.
I mean, so many things that we take for granted starts with a little government funding on something that's an idea, right? You can see that with the Green Revolution, right? I mean, Norman Borlaug and all that, right? There's some federal support for this, and lo and behold, we have a world that's able to feed itself when prior to that, it looked like we wouldn't be able to, right? And we've reached that point where it's time to reinvest. I think in that kind of research and innovation, and we're not doing it right. We're not setting ourselves up for success 20 years from now, or even 10 years from now, because we're not investing today. So that's where I come out on the budget. Right, they're cutting all kinds of stuff left and right. I don't think it all makes sense. Not that some of it doesn't make sense, but overall, it's not focused. It's not a scalpel. It's much more just like a big meat cleaver going to stuff, and that's just not that's the way they chopped up chickens in Guyana, and you got lots of bones in the chicken when you were served it, and that was not a good thing. Need to be a little more surgical, use a fillet knife, right? Not a
I don't know. Some people like to have a little bit of extra, calcium in there. But I agree with you, Paul. I do have the numbers in front of me, which is the White House recommended a $4.9 billion reduction, which was
yeah,
20% less than the 26 allocation. The House has come back and their reduction is only 675 million. So it seems like they're recognizing the need for some of these programs. If we're talking about research specifically, APHIS and NEFA would have a significant amount of funding taken away, most specifically related to climate hubs and climate core, which basically is advocating for what many folks call as climate smart agriculture. Um, Meanwhile, ARS would have funding that stays at the same levels. And
yeah,
I want, and just I want your perspective on this. I You are very correct that a little bit of research goes a long way. The U.S. has been a world leader in scientific research for agriculture, and as a result, agricultural production for the better part of a century. The reason we were able to survive the Dust Bowl was we learned from it. We then said what needs to be done. We made agricultural models, and we brought it to. It was tools were provided to our farmers. Um, I am a lucky graduate of Michigan State University, the first land grant agricultural college in the country. This is a unique system for any country. We are the only ones that directly invest in specific universities to be focused on agricultural development. And uh, taking any of those dollars away without a specified purpose really misses the forest for the trees. Sir?
yeah, absolutely. So on the if they're shutting down all the climate hubs and all the, I get that they don't like climate change, right? I'm not sure why, because I see the evidence of it, right? But I get that they don't, and that's their prerogative. But how do we fight New World screwworm and protect Texas cattle industry if we aren't cognizant of how the changing climate is creating a more fertile environment for the New World screwworm to
Hmm.
spread, right? I mean, a lot of the spread is due to illicit cattle trade and needing to match up the new routes and stuff like that. But a lot of it is due to climate. So how are we going to combat that? Right? We've got New World screwworm cases 62 miles from the Texas border now.
Yep.
That's not very far. So what happens when it jumps and it shows up in Brownsville or somewhere, right? Or it shows up in Central Texas. I just don't get how you combat something that's a threat to it's going to cost us billions of dollars. So why are we not investing in looking at how the changing climate is accelerating the spread of the New World screwworm and thus how we can fight that, right?
Yeah.
Because we got to
And
fight it.
the thing I'll just point out, Paul, is we've identified that New World screwworm is a problem, and there is work being done to address it, right?
Yeah,
But we don't know what the next problem is going to be. Because
yeah,
if you talked to me 3 years ago, I'd be like, screwworm, that's in Paraguay. Why are we worried about that up in the North America itself? And within that small amount of time, we've had changes in migratory patterns that have been leading to this the northward migration of this pest. We don't know what the next pest is going to be, and what our next problem is if we are not doing the research. So very 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 much along what you're saying. I will say I am glad that the House is taking some measures and putting money where it is useful, such as USDA uh, is attempting an overhaul of its registration system.
hmm
So they're calling it One Farmer, One File. $50 million is being allocated to modernize the IT structure framework and actually make it so that every time a farmer needs to file for some registration or for some land use, they don't have to fill out a completely new form.
that's good.
And this will, if it gets implemented fully in the way that's supposed to, this could be a tremendous boon for our farmers, if only so they don't have to spend 20 hours a week in front of their computer just filling in another form. So I
Exactly.
it's it, we I note where there are problems, I note where there are benefits.
Yeah, that'd be a great development, right? To lower the administrivia aspect of farming. Be
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah. I do like the word administrivia.
Administrivia. Yeah.
I've never heard that before. Um,
Oh, it's quite accurate, right? I mean, for farmers, for
mhm.
so much paperwork, right? And anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
It's,
remember
comes to top of mind during tax season, which is just passed, so,
I'm very happy that my husband takes care of that for us.
yeah.
The two other things I'll note very quickly is that there is an increase for the Farm Service Agency, specifically to improve the tracking of foreign-owned U.S. agricultural land. This has been a big concern over the last decade or so. The idea that Russia, China, Iran, and others might be buying up our agricultural lands. I I don't know if it's all that important based on all the reports that I've seen. It doesn't the
Yeah,
percentage that they're buying
it's pretty
is,
small.
yeah, and I can see why it's still alarming. It
It
feels weird to think that my backyard could be owned by, I'll just say, Sierra Leone, right?
it's pretty small percentages, but sometimes it's alarming where it shows
Mm-hmm.
up,
Yeah.
right? At the end of the runway at the Air Force Base, that's kinda,
Yeah,
um,
and it depends on, is it strategic buying? Is it, like, is it a state-owned entity, or is it just a business that wants to have closer ties to its agricultural counterparts in the US? And those
yeah,
things are
and
difficult to tease out.
yeah, and other times it's because, investment in the United States is a safe way to protect your money,
Hmm.
right? Like, if you're a Chinese company and you do agriculture, oh, if you could buy some US land, then, oh, look, you've got, part of your assets out of control of the Communist Party. That's
Yeah,
kind of their goal, right, for a lot of folks. And same thing in Russia and other places too, right? Like, it's not sometimes it's nefarious, sometimes it's not. How do you know when? It's hard to know, right?
yeah,
Um, but we spent a lot of time working on that and talking about that, and
we did.
I'm glad to see they're, still take it seriously because you should,
Hmm.
but at the same time, it's not like there are plenty of other, topics to chase after that improve national security as well.
Yeah. Talking about China and its agricultural
One of my favorite topics, always China.
goals. Um, One thing I was tracking when I was at the State Department and even to now is their investment in the biotechnology sector, especially in agriculture.
Yep.
And I'm not going to quote all the figures and stats, but basically they have a number of planning documents and strategies that have been going back over a decade, in which they are investing heavily in their own agricultural research and infrastructure, especially for biotechnology, because they recognize that their dependence on other countries for agricultural imports is a weakness for their own national security.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, they don't have the land or the water resources um, necessary to completely divest themselves, but they're going to work as best they can to increase their productivity, their efficiency, and deliver their own, especially feedstocks for animals, um, on site rather than being so dependent on imports.
Yeah, and they've been doing a whole lot of work to reduce, their overall consumption of feedstocks, right, of inputs, actually alter their animal breeding practices and their
Hmm.
consumption patterns. The same time that China is, becoming a more protein, intensive society. I think it's fascinating what they've done, right, and what they continue to do. Huge challenge to us, right, because 'cause they're always trying to pursue US biotechnology and get the knowledge. Um, and that's a whole 'nother topic there. Um, okay, so China, I think, one of the things that I always found interesting on China was for years, they harped on GMOs bad, GMOs bad, right? Just
Hmm.
and that's what they fed their citizens, right? They fed them that line, right?
Yes, that
And now
they
they're trying to feed them GMOs,
yeah,
right?
they fed the animals GM crops because they needed to, and now
Yeah,
they're trying to grow and potentially feed their own people these crops. Although
yeah.
that it
So
is a
how are
little
they
ways.
handling that one, right?
It
Because now they gotta flip the narrative, complete 360 from bad Western GMO to good Chinese GMO, and the
it.
Chinese consumer, they're used
Mhm.
to dealing with the Communist Party. I don't think it's a full faith and credit kind of acceptance when they
No.
hear the opposite thing come out of their mouth suddenly.
The it is going to be interesting because, like the U.S., most of their GE crops, at least initially, are going to be oil seeds and grains, right? And so this
Yeah,
is again mostly going to be feeding their livestock. Um, they are investing in rice though, and that of course is a primary staple for the population. The question
yep,
is whether they're going to be bringing it to their people or if they're just going to use it as an export. There's already it's been noted that they are engaging with the ASEAN nations, which are some of their biggest trading partners in the region, the biggest trading partners in the region, and seeing what the how the regulatory systems fit with one another. The
mhm,
U.S. has been engaged in the space for close to 20 years, and ASEAN's always pushed back and had
yeah,
their own perspectives. And it's a bit of a hodgepodge. Some countries are more accepting, Vietnam, others are less so, Indonesia. Um, but with a superpower on their back saying we want you to accept our products sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, you may see some rapid changes to the way ASEAN regulates these products as opposed to the past. Um,
and that would be helpful, right? I mean, that'd be helpful for us in our
it,
export.
oh well, not if China dominates the market and says buy
Not
our
if China
products and
dominates
not
the
the
market, but,
US's.
setting up the regime, right?
Mm.
And one that's accepting.
It
I mean,
depends on how the
it's
regime. I want to be very careful. It depends on how the regime is set up. One thing
yeah,
I'll note about the way that China has been doing their approvals is uh, 2 to 3 times a year we'll see
slowly,
approvals come out from them, and oh my goodness, most of the approvals are what Chinese-owned
Chinese.
companies, and U.S. approvals or products that are from U.S. companies. They've been sitting there for 4, 5, 6, 7 years,
10 years or more sometimes.
held
Yeah,
in what often over what seems to be very arbitrary reasons. And so I could see something similar happening in ASEAN. The U.S. always supports science-based, risk-proportionate regulations, and that is what they try to support when they're talking with their partners. The Chinese, though, will very much probably be along the lines of accept our products.
yeah,
That's what your regulations are. So I agree that a reform scheme that is broader and is focused on scientific rigor would be useful for all parties. I don't know if that's what we're going to get from the Chinese putting pressure on ASEAN nations.
we'll have to see. What else we got? Anything else you wanna touch on?
Okay. Unfortunately, we're starting to run low on time. So
Okay,
next week, I really want to talk about how Maha is influencing the agricultural space, especially related to glyphosate. But for right now, I
yep.
just want to end on a happy note, which is the peanut genome has been sequenced 100%. Everyone's been so excited about it. They've been waiting.
Congratulations, Mr. Peanut.
Yeah, right on the edges of their seat. it's been difficult because humans are we're diploid creatures, which means we have two sets of each of our chromosome.
Yep.
Peanuts and a lot of other plant species can be more complicated. Peanuts actually have four sets of their chromosome, but even it gets even more interesting because it's all peanuts that we use today are essentially hybrids of
Mhm.
two ancient lines that crossed with each other. So you have two sets of chromosomes from one ancient line and two sets of chromosomes from another. And so that means the
Wow.
sequencing gets even more complicated. Um, uh, but it's fantastic that they've been able to get to this point where they have a sequence, well, four sequences that they trust, and they've been able to identify parts of the genome that are responsible for oil production and biomass. And so the thought, of course, is there may be a point in the future where you can do some targeted editing on the peanut so that it produces more oil, it grows faster, it grows in a
Gets
hardier
bigger?
soil. Go ahead, sir.
Gets bigger?
It's
As
bigger. I mean,
Yep.
get some monster sized ones. You talk about Mr. Peanut. I'll go for a human sized peanut. Let's see what we can do with that.
This could be interesting. Yeah.
More peanut butter for everybody.
Well, that is pretty cool. And amazing, right? I did not realize peanuts were, so complex
Hmm.
'cause, yeah, they're just in the shell there. They're so simple.
Yeah.
Um, Eating them at the ballpark at least.
Uh,
Okay.
Talk to my buddy. He's a strawberry breeder, and you think the peanuts are complex? You'll have a hard time following what he goes through because I certainly can't. But thank you all so much for listening to us today. We appreciate your support, and until next time, we're your agriculture advocates.
Y'all take care. Thank you.